February 2025 will be etched in the annals of American history as a period of dramatic policy shifts and international upheaval. Former President Donald J. Trump, retaking the Oval Office after a 4-year hiatus, wasted no time in implementing his vision for America's future. This whirlwind month saw a flurry of executive orders, policy reversals, and bold pronouncements that left both allies and adversaries reeling. From the halls of Congress to the global stage, the reverberations of Trump's actions were felt far and wide. The world watched with bated breath as Trump, a figure as polarizing as he is unpredictable, set about dismantling the legacy of his predecessor and reasserting American dominance on the world stage. This essay will delve into the key policies and events that defined February 2025, examining their impact on both the domestic and international landscape. From trade wars to immigration crackdowns, climate change skepticism to a more confrontational approach to foreign policy, Trump's second act promises to be as eventful and consequential as his first. As the dust settles on this tumultuous month, one thing is certain: the world is watching, and the stakes have never been higher. Central to Trump's February agenda was a renewed emphasis on his signature America First economic policy. This translated into a series of aggressive trade measures designed to protect American jobs and industries, often at the expense of international partnerships. One of the most significant moves came with the America First investment policy aimed at promoting investment from allied nations while simultaneously restricting those deemed adversaries. This policy, seen by some as protectionist, sent shockwaves through the global economy and raised concerns about potential trade wars. China found itself squarely in the crosshairs of Trump's trade offensive. The administration launched a Section 301 investigation into China's maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding sectors, signaling potential future tariffs. Adding fuel to the fire was the introduction of the China Technology Transfer Control Act, aimed at stemming the flow of sensitive technologies to Beijing. These actions exacerbated already strained relations with China and raised the specter of a full-blown trade war between the world's two largest economies. Trump didn't stop with China. He reinstated a 25% tariff on steel imports, drawing immediate retaliation from the European Union. Similar actions targeting aluminum imports are anticipated, further escalating trade tensions with key allies. While the administration argues these measures are necessary to protect American workers, critics warn of the potential for global economic instability and a decline in international cooperation. Trump's domestic agenda proved equally disruptive, targeting a wide range of policies enacted by the previous administration. One of the most controversial moves was the systematic dismantling of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives across government agencies and even within the private sector. Through a series of executive orders, Trump rolled back decades of progress in promoting workplace equality, sparking outrage from civil rights groups, and raising concerns about increased discrimination. Immigration, a hallmark issue during Trump's first presidency, once again took center stage. The administration implemented stricter border security measures, including increased migrant detention and the rescinding of policies deemed catch and release. Access to funds and parole for migrants was restricted, signaling a return to a more hardline approach. These measures, while applauded by some for their focus on border security, drew sharp criticism from human rights organizations and immigration advocates. Trump's budget cuts sent shockwaves through various federal agencies. Significant job cuts were announced, achieved through a combination of buyouts and firings. The controversial Schedule F, allowing for the easier dismissal of federal employees deemed disloyal, was reinstated, sending chills through the civil service. These actions, coupled with a hiring freeze and restrictions on collective bargaining, signaled a significant downsizing of the federal government and a shift towards a more conservative agenda. On the global stage, Trump's foreign policy moves were equally dramatic, characterized by a return to his America First approach and a willingness to upend long-standing international norms. Iran found itself once again in the crosshairs of American foreign policy. Citing concerns over its nuclear program and regional influence, the Trump administration reinstated crippling sanctions, effectively dismantling the fragile nuclear deal negotiated by the previous administration. This move, while applauded by some in the region, raised tensions in the Middle East and drew criticism from European allies. Relations with Russia, already fraught with tension, took an unexpected turn as Trump pursued closer ties with Moscow. Despite ongoing sanctions over Russia's actions in Ukraine, the administration engaged in direct talks with the Kremlin, seeking common ground on issues such as arms control and counterterrorism. This rapprochement, however, came at a cost, as Trump signaled a willingness to concede to some of Russia's demands, raising concerns about the future of NATO and the security of Eastern Europe. Perhaps the most significant foreign policy shift came in Trump's approach to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The administration suspended military aid to the embattled nation and signaled a willingness to accept Russia's annexation of Crimea, a move that drew condemnation from both Democrats and Republicans in Congress. Critics accused Trump of abandoning a key ally and emboldening Russia's aggression in the region. The long-term consequences of this policy shift remain uncertain, but it has undoubtedly sent shockwaves through the international community. Section 5. Public Opinion, A Nation Divided. Trump's whirlwind month in office has left the American public deeply divided, with polls reflecting the polarizing nature of his policies. Public approval ratings, which stood at 45% in January 2025, experienced a slight dip to 42% by the end of February, according to the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Crowell and Moring LLP reported a similar figure of 43% approval for the same period. While these numbers indicate a slight decline in public support, they also underscore the enduring appeal of Trump's populist message among a significant portion of the electorate. The reasons behind this dip in approval ratings are multifaceted. The Foundation for Defense of Democracies attributes the decline to public unease over Trump's handling of the Ukraine crisis and the abrupt firing of several high-ranking military officials. The controversial nature of these decisions, seen by some as undermining American credibility and national security, appears to have eroded public confidence in Trump's leadership on the world stage. Meanwhile, Crowell and Moring LLP points to the mixed reactions to Trump's trade policies as another contributing factor to the decline in approval ratings. While some segments of the population, particularly those employed in manufacturing and heavy industries, welcomed the tariffs and protectionist measures, others expressed concern over the potential for higher prices and economic retaliation from trading partners. This division in public opinion highlights the complex challenges faced by the Trump administration in balancing the interests of different economic groups. Section 6. The China Challenge: Confrontation or Cooperation. Trump's approach to China has emerged as one of the defining features of his second term, setting the stage for a potentially consequential clash between the world's two superpowers. His America First policies, coupled with his distrust of Beijing's intentions, have led to a more confrontational stance on trade, technology, and security matters. The administration's decision to initiate a Section 301 investigation into China's maritime industries, along with the introduction of the China Technology Transfer Control Act, are seen as clear signals of Trump's determination to challenge China's growing economic and military might. However, this confrontational approach carries significant risks. A full-blown trade war between the United States and China would have far-reaching consequences for the global economy, potentially leading to higher prices for consumers, disruptions to supply chains, and a decline in international trade. Moreover, escalating tensions could spill over into other areas, such as security and diplomacy, further complicating efforts to address shared global challenges like climate change and pandemics. Despite the risks, some argue that a more assertive approach is necessary to counter what they perceive as China's unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, and aggressive military expansion. They believe that only by taking a hard line can the United States protect its economic interests and maintain its global leadership. Whether Trump can strike the delicate balance between confrontation and cooperation remains to be seen, but his actions in February 2025 have undoubtedly set the stage for a turbulent period in U.S.-China relations. Section 7. Repercussions and Reactions: A World on Edge. The reverberations of Trump's February policies were felt far beyond the borders of the United States, eliciting a mix of anxiety, condemnation, and cautious optimism from world leaders. The European Union, long a close ally, expressed deep concern over Trump's protectionist trade measures, particularly the reinstatement of steel tariffs. The EU's swift response, announcing retaliatory tariffs of its own, signaled a hardening of its stance and raised the specter of a transatlantic trade war. Elsewhere, Trump's decision to reimpose sanctions on Iran drew mixed reactions. Israel and Saudi Arabia, both staunch opponents of Tehran, welcomed the move as a necessary step to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions and regional influence. However, European powers who had worked to salvage the Iran nuclear deal expressed disappointment and warned that Trump's actions could destabilize the region and increase the risk of conflict. Russia, on the other hand, saw an opportunity in Trump's more conciliatory approach. The Kremlin welcomed the resumption of direct talks with Washington and signaled its willingness to explore areas of cooperation, particularly on arms control and counterterrorism. However, this apparent thaw in relations raised concerns among some Western capitals that Trump might be willing to make concessions to Moscow at the expense of NATO unity and the security of Eastern Europe. Section 8. The Road Ahead, Uncertainty and Unpredictability. As February 2025 drew to a close, a sense of uncertainty hung heavy over both Washington and the world at large. Trump's flurry of executive orders, policy reversals, and diplomatic overtures had left observers scrambling to make sense of his agenda and its potential ramifications. One thing, however, was abundantly clear: the Trump presidency, in its second iteration, would be anything but predictable. The domestic landscape remained deeply divided, with Trump's policies continuing to inflame passions on both sides of the political spectrum. His supporters lauded his decisive leadership and his unwavering commitment to putting America first, while his detractors denounced his actions as reckless, divisive, and harmful to the nation's standing in the world. On the international stage, Trump's unpredictable nature and his willingness to challenge long-standing norms had injected a new element of volatility into global affairs. Allies and adversaries alike were left to grapple with the implications of his America First worldview and his penchant for unilateral action. Whether this approach would ultimately lead to greater stability or heightened tensions remained an open question. Section 9. Join the conversation, your voice matters. The events of February 2025 have sparked a vital national conversation about the direction of our nation and its role in the world. As citizens, it is our duty to engage in this dialogue with respect, civility, and a commitment to understanding perspectives different from our own. What are your thoughts on the significant policy shifts enacted by the Trump administration? Do you believe these changes will ultimately benefit or harm the United States? How should the international community respond to Trump's America First agenda? Your voice matters. Share your insights and perspectives in the comments section below, and let us engage in a thoughtful and productive exchange of ideas.